This is a hard one. I've actually had to restart this a couple times over, trying to get through this. I'm hoping I've done this enough times it's the last time. But let's start with the facts. Charlie Kirk was assassinated on September 10th, 2025. He was at Utah Valley University doing what he normally does. For those of you who do not know him that well, he's a very well-known conservative speaker with Turning Point USA, which is a nonprofit organization he co-founded, whose goal on their own website is to identify, educate, train, and organize students to promote the principles of fiscal responsibility, free markets, and limited government. So basically conservative ideals. He himself was actually a college dropout. He left Harper College, which was a community college in Palatine, Illinois. From my memory, I believe he left basically for two reasons. One, college wasn't one of his things. It just wasn't for him. But he also saw colleges as a bastion of liberal thought, brainwashing students and shunning conservatives. Colleges and universities, as we know, are overwhelmingly liberal. Now, as you probably know, I don't like to just say things without a little support, so I'm going to give you a little evidence for that, although all you have to do is step on a college campus, and I think you can figure this out. But recently, there was a study done by the EFI Institute. They analyzed 437,783 contributions, so almost 500,000 contributions made by K-12 teachers and university professors during the 2022 election cycle, right? So donations made during the 2022 election cycle from educators. The K-12 teachers donated at a rate of 68% to Democrats. So basically a 2-to-1 ratio of Democrats to Republican donations. The university professors donated at a rate of 93% to Democrats. Now, why did we use this as a kind of a marker of things? Well, you can say whatever you want. I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative, I'm an independent. But at the end of the day, you put your money where your mouth is. So I think that donations are probably the most accurate way of assessing someone's true political belief. And 93% of college professors donate to the Democratic Party. Now, you might say, well, sure, yeah, they're liberal, but, they can still be objective and honest in terms of their teaching and education. Well, as I love to say, the proof is in the pudding. So this is another study that came out actually very recently, I think this year. And this was from Forrest Rahm and Kevin Waldman. And they conducted 1,452 confidential interviews, so almost 1,500 interviews with students from Northwestern University, whose president was recently fired, by the way, and the University of Michigan. And the main question was, quote, "Have you ever pretended to hold more progressive views than you truly endorse to succeed socially or academically?" End quote. And the answer was yes, 88% of the time. So 88% of the students pretended they were more progressive or liberal to fit in. Check out the study. There were other questions too. Perhaps the one that gave the most interesting data point, the most telling, was that 38% described themselves, right? So these are undergrads. 38% of these undergrads described themselves as morally confused, uncertain whether honesty was still ethical if it meant exclusion. Now, I myself live this in academia. As you could probably tell, I'm not one of the ones that hide or pretend. But it is funny because I am around many, usually students, right? Because they don't want to be affected. They don't want their grades affected or their social standing affected. But there's a certain dance you do when you try to find out if someone else is also conservative. And it starts out with, something like a benign comment like, oh, taxes are too high. And then maybe, inflation stinks. And maybe you kind of go a little further and say how bad crime is. And then maybe someone takes a little leap of faith and says sex is biologically based. And the next thing you know, you're singing Kumbaya about how great Trump is. Because when a conservative student finds another like-minded individual, it's a moment. It's a sense of freedom. It's a release. I've actually referred to this as the underground railroad of academia. But it's still underground. You don't tell anyone. You hide. And I know there's a couple of my students who hopefully will be watching this as well and know that, yes, I'm thinking of you. And no, I will not say who you are. You will still be hidden. So anyway, in that realm, Charlie Kirk founded Turning Point USA in 2012. And he wanted to combat this liberal bastion of thought, to promote free speech, to promote dialogue. And he really came to fame, as far as I know, from going to college campuses, setting up a table, going under a tent, and taking questions from anyone who disagrees or anyone who just doesn't know. They don't necessarily agree or disagree. They just don't know. And he'll take questions and give answers and have a dialogue. They'd come up to the microphone and they would go from there. He wouldn't let like-minded people come to the microphone because there was no point. He doesn't need to talk to someone who already agrees with him. He didn't want an echo chamber. He wanted a discussion. It's very similar to what Steven Crowder would do with the Change My Mind videos, right? Set up a table. There's only two genders, change my mind. Charlie Kirk's was very similar. It's called Prove Me Wrong. But both of them would actually have very cordial discussions from their point. Every once in a while you got a major douchebag that would come up and just be a complete asshole. And they just, said, all right, we're done, and, ended it. But for the most part, these were very cordial discussions, even with people who very much disagreed with them. And the topics could vary. It could be anything from abortion to Trump to the economy. One of the most famous things that came up frequently was, ironically, college is a scam. And he's not wrong. But he never lectured. People wouldn't come up and he would just tell them the answers. He would use the Socratic method. He would ask them questions. He would ask them to support their thoughts, to support, why they thought something. They couldn't just say something with no support. They couldn't just give a feeling. They have to give data or analysis or critical thinking. And that was something they never had to do before. They had to think. And as we know, thinking is kryptonite to the left. And those events, if you watch them, and please do, they're the most welcoming and accepting interactions you could imagine. I can think of many. I have watched hours and hours, and this is probably one of the reasons this is pretty hard. I never met Charlie Kirk. I don't even think I know anyone who's met Charlie Kirk personally, but I've watched him so much, it almost seems like you know him. And he was a wonderful man. Again, I'd love to show you videos of all of this in the interest of time, both in this podcast as well as me just searching to try to find examples. I'm just going to talk about a few things that occurred many times over, a common theme through many of his videos. And one of those themes is how nice he was to people that disagreed with him, how welcoming he was. And this is something, I'll give you examples of things that didn't occur once. These are things that occurred over and over again in many different videos at many different places. Someone would come up and clearly ignorant, ask a question or make a statement, and Charlie Kirk would ask them a question. And he knew they didn't know the answer. And the challenger, the student, would give an answer that was clearly already debunked or is clearly a myth that people know is wrong. And all the Charlie Kirk supporters behind him would start going, "Oh, I can't believe you thought that. Oh, well, you should." And Charlie Kirk, to his credit, would just say, "Guys, take it easy. Take it easy. Let them speak. Let them have their word. Let them, just give them some time." Sometimes the speakers would come up and they'd be very nervous, stumbling over their words, getting lost in thought, visibly nervous. And he would tell them, "Hey, what you're doing is very difficult. It's very hard to come up in front of cameras in front of a crowd of people who don't think like you and ask questions in earnest. You're showing a lot of bravery. It's very hard. It's okay to be nervous. Take your time. We'll wait. Not something you'd hear a monster say. Sometimes people would come up, they'd be a little angry because they already don't like him, and they'd try to ask some pointed questions or seemingly comments that might be thought to provoke. And Charlie Kirk would actually, take it in a good sense. And he would say, you know what, I think you're coming at this from good faith, meaning I don't think you're trying to make me look like a dick. I don't think you're trying to get a soundbite for your friends. I think you're actually asking this in good faith. He's literally said that multiple times. I think you're coming at this from good faith. So I'm going to answer in good faith. And he would. Doesn't matter who you were. Doesn't matter what color you were, what sex you were, what sex you thought they were. He would answer in good faith. And at the end of the day, sometimes someone would come up, they'd have a full discussion for several minutes, and it was just like butting heads. Not bad, but just not coming to an agreement. And you know what? Charlie Kirk would just say, you know what? I just don't think we're going to agree on this. And he was okay with that. He wasn't like, determined to change this person's mind. He'd just say, you know what? We're not going to agree on this. But then he would say, but let's see if there's something we can agree on, right? Something that's a little tangential to the topic or adjacent to the topic that's much smaller that we can come to agreement with, just to try to bridge the gap somehow. It's not an evil person. Sometimes students would come up and say, why are you coming to college campuses? Why are you picking on kids? And he'd say, you know what? College kids vote. You're supposed to be adults. You're supposed to think. We give you enough credit that we let you vote in elections. I think you're an important group to educate. And then he said, you know what? But I don't have to speak to you. Have your professors come out. Bring out anybody. I don't care. You're your most, hardened liberal professor. Bring them out. They didn't come out. And then he'd say, I'm a community college dropout. You should know more than me. You're more educated than me. If it's that great, you should be schooling me. So he was very, very cordial, very common sense, very accepting. And perhaps some of the most telling things at the end of a conversation, if someone couldn't come to any agreement whatsoever, but it was all in good faith, they got along well, didn't agree on anything, they'd ask him, hey, Charlie, can I get a hat? Because on the table, he'd have a whole bunch of hats, MAGA hats, 47 hats, and he'd hand out to people, throw out to the crowd. And the strong liberal would ask him if he could have a hat. And you know what Charlie Kirk said or did? If it was a good argument, he's like, of course you can. Give him a big smile, throw out the hat. Fantastic, man. And over the years, over many events, over many podcasts that he'd been on, Charlie Kirk got a huge following. He would show up to anywhere, college events, all these events he would do. Thousands would turn out. I think at the last one, the Utah Valley one, I think there were something like 2,000 to 3,000 people that were there to turn out to see Charlie Kirk. And this was a problem. He was teaching thousands to think in the very institutions where they weren't supposed to. And those kids were happy, and they weren't supposed to be. You see, schools aren't about thinking or reasoning or analyzing. They're about indoctrinating. They make you think you're thinking and analyzing. They're not. They only give facts from one side. They hyperinflate your emotion to make you see hate everywhere that isn't your way. Everyone you disagree with is a Nazi, a racist, a homophobe, transphobe, misogynist, whatever. But I've said this a million times, that's their game plan. It's literally written out in their game book, right? Rules for Radical, Saul Alinsky, 1960s. Do not fight the man. Sorry, do not fight the points. Fight the man. Demonize the man. And show that. Fight the man, not the points. Remember when Trump got elected the third time? And And people were telling you, don't go see your family members. Don't go to Thanksgiving. Don't talk to them. Don't have any interaction with them. That's what cults do, right? Cults isolate. Cults keep you away from your family and friends. Cults keep you away from your connections. It's fascinating. You'll see all these protests about anything and everything going on, all the time. And in the past, the protests, what's the point? What's the point of a protest? The point of the protest is to get your word out, right? You want as many cameras there as possible. You want as many people there as possible. You want to talk to as many people there as possible. But now they have these protests, and what happens? Camera comes in, they put their hand up. They're blocking you out. They don't want to see you. You get people interviewing people at protests, asking them questions. And the leaders will say, don't talk to him. He's a conservative. He's got a podcast. He's going to put you on your podcast. Well, aren't those precisely the people you want to talk to? You don't need to convince people who are already on your side. You need to convince the other side. You want to talk to them. But they don't want you to talk to them because they know you can't talk to them. Because all you have are your bumper sticker slogans. The reason the second someone asks you a question to delve further, you freeze. You have no idea what you're talking about, and you look like a fool because you are. You don't know what you're supporting. So they block the cameras. They block people from coming in. I know Charlie Kirk managed to, eventually get onto these college campuses a lot, but it's very common that college campuses try to block conservatives from coming on. There's countless examples of people getting their speeches canceled at the last minute. Oh, we double booked. We can't get security enough for you. Telling point, right? They don't need security for liberals. There have been multiple examples where they charge many times the rate of liberal presenters, those are the leaders, right? But also the student body will also prevent free speech from occurring, right? So I don't know if you remember this in 2017, Milo Yiannopoulos, big Trump supporter, went to go to speak at UC Berkeley, right? Protesters there caused over $100,000 in damages, throwing fireworks, rocks, Molotov cocktails on their own campus. There were 150 masked agitators. By the way, 2017, that's before the COVID lockdown. They were masked agitators. 150, not 3 or 4 crazies, 150. Now, I don't know how many of them were students, how many were paid agitators from other people like a Soros, but they destroyed their own campus to prevent difference of thought. Hashtag diversity, right? More recently, Riley Gaines. She was at San Francisco State University. She got assaulted on stage and then barricaded in the room for hours. She was just trying to talk about how boys shouldn't go into girls' sports and boys shouldn't go into girls' locker rooms. They don't want anyone saying anything else or anything differently or any other opinions or any other thought. Again, I'm going to beat a dead horse here. The left is a cult, and their biggest weapon is isolation. They don't want you to see they don't want you to see what they're doing. They don't want their people to know what you're saying or what you're thinking. And they can do this very effectively on campus. And like good Soviets, they don't just need the leaders to do it. The members will turn you in. That's why students lie about their political stance, even to their own peers, right? 88%. Just so they don't get turned in. That isolation is the cult's strongest defense. If you don't see or hear anything differently, no one gives you a chance to think you will be a good member. But Charlie Kirk was opening their eyes. He and people like him were cracking the cult. In their minds, Charlie Kirk was very dangerous. I mean, they already think he's evil, right? He's a Nazi, he's a racist. I mean, we all are. But he was worse. He was breaking the cult. The cult had to protect itself. Now, as of this recording, they have the presumed killer in custody, 22-year-old guy. There are many theories about it. Did he act alone? Was he with someone else? Why did he do it? Was he crazy? Was he sane? We can talk about forever all the possibilities. In fact, people who know me, I've laid out all the possibilities. But I'm going to go with Occam's razor here. The simplest answer is probably the right one. The murderer was a member of the cult. Everything he was told from his leaders were true. Everything else was false and evil. And the assassin was going to do his job like a good member. He was going to kill evil because that's what his programming allowed. And he shot and he killed Charlie Kirk. We'll soon find out, hopefully, if he was acting alone. And we'll soon execute, hopefully, his killer. But this is why the left had to kill Charlie Kirk. He was breaking down the cult. He was exposing students to different ideas. He was training them to think. That had to be stopped. And if you think I'm wrong, look at the way the left dreams of this, the way they react to this, the way they dream of death. You remember our most recent failed VP candidate? A little while ago, Trump didn't make an appearance for like 2 days, and the rumors were already out that he died. Well, Tampon Tim was rooting for it. Watch this video as he talks about the rumors that were going around that Trump had died.
You get up in the morning and you doom scroll through things, and although I will say this, the last few days you woke up thinking there might be news. Just saying. There will be news sometime, just so you know, there will be news.
Yeah. He was doing a speech in front of a crowd, probably like 8 people. But he was rooting for the news of Trump's death. But not only rooting it, not keeping it to himself. He was broadcasting this as an appropriate thought to his followers. And that was before Charlie Kirk's murder. Maybe things settled down a little bit. People took a breath, cooled off, softened. Not even close. Now, I've showed you the reactions from the left when Trump was almost assassinated about how everyone was so upset that the shooter missed. And it's really no different now. When I went on my X profile, and I just saw reams and reams and reams and reams of liberals celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. I mean, it was horrible. And I'm not going to show you that. And not only that, reams of people giving lists of other people that should be next. You know, Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, Tim Lynch. It's crazy. But I'm going to show you just a few, as I like to say, classical examples to just kind of prove the point. One was, and I'm going to show you, this was something that got posted on X from Dries van Langenhove, and this was a story that was in Belgium's biggest newspaper, which is subsidized by the European Union. And the title was, Het is zijn eigen schuld, den vinden Vlaamse tieners van der moord op Charlie Kirk, 31. 31, by the way, is the age he died. Loosely translated, I'm assuming, because it's in the post, it's his own fault. This is what teenagers think of the murder of Charlie Kirk. It's his own fault. You know, I'm sure those same teenagers would have said, well, of course she got raped. What did she expect? She was wearing such a tiny dress and went out to a bar and had drinks with people. It's just absolute insanity. But again, he deserved it. These teenagers clearly have zero idea, because they've never watched him, what he's like. They literally don't know anything. But you know what? They were told he was evil. A Nazi, homophobe, transphobe, blah, 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 blah. And so what do you do with that? Isn't it right to kill evil? But let's look at another example. And I think I've done this before with the same guy, similar idea. Stephen King, you know, educated literary figure, writes all those books about monsters and horror scenarios. By the way, he did happen to write that one book where they beat the monster by writing about the children having an orgy to beat the monster. That guy. So here is his response. One day after Charlie Kirk's murder, Jesse Waters had posted on X. He said, Charlie Kirk was not a controversial or polarizing man. Charlie was a patriot. This is a turning point, and we all need to turn in the right direction. Rest in peace, my friend. Stephen King's response on 9/11/25. He advocated stoning gays to death. Just saying. Now, as I've already kind of described, anytime I'm doing a podcast and I'm a nobody, there are lots of things I remember, but I want to make sure I remember them correctly, even if they're subtle, minor things. I'll try to look it up on the internet, trying to find the exact quote, the exact video, the exact story, the exact study to make sure I remembered it correctly. Which is, by the way, not always easy, because try looking up conservative things on Google. So when you come out and say he advocated stoning gays to death, you better be able to back that up. Well, what was Charlie Kirk's thought? Well, here's a post from November of 2019. I believe marriage is one man, one woman. Also, gay people should be welcome in the conservative movement. As Christians, we are called to love everyone. I will always stand against people who wish to establish their own personal values as a reason to kick others out of our movement. Yeah, that doesn't sound like someone who wants to stone the gays. So what was Stephen King's follow-up to this? Well, he posted on X, I have apologized. Charlie Kirk never advocated stoning gays to death. Well, too fucking late, man. Too fucking late. You are the reason people do this. Now, again, I'm not going to say you killed Charlie Kirk. The guy that killed him. But that's the reason this guy became such a hate-filled person. And let's go back, you know what? Let's go back to Europe. So what was the old world's take on this from not just students, but, educated people whose role is to analyze these things? Well, Nicholas Lissack posted this video on X, and this was from Good Morning Britain, I believe. And this was a guy that was speaking. His name is Nels Abbey. I have zero idea who he is, but he got on a TV show. He must be someone of importance. He dresses well. He speaks well. And let's look and see what he thought about Charlie Kirk.
Yeah. I'll say, can I just say something? I don't agree he was a Cicero for the TikTok age. I believe he was a David Duke for the TikTok age. And I have some degree...
Can you just remind us who David Duke
was? The former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. This was a very seriously deep... Now, this is by no means trying to justify his murder. Political violence is wrong at home. It is wrong abroad. It is wrong, and it's also wrong, political violence must be condemned, as must be the propagandizing for political violence and the dehumanization of people. Charlie Kirk was somebody who was, I shiver, particularly for conservatives, when he's described as conservative, because he wasn't a conservative by any means whatsoever. He was quite clearly, comfortably, a supremacist. That if I was somebody who was going on television, I'm sure you wouldn't describe somebody who goes on TV and blames Jewish people for what he describes as the coarsening of Western culture, says things like the Equality Act or the Civil Rights Act or so was a mistake, says things like women shouldn't be entitled to abortions, etc., so on and so forth.
Very extreme things. I'm just going to...
Yeah. So he said he's not a conservative. He's a supremacist like David Duke, like the great wizard of the KKK. Again, obviously someone who's never watched Charlie Kirk. Or maybe he's watched some brief thing out of context. But he has zero idea who he is, what he stands for, what he believes in. Because if he had any idea, he would have never made that statement. And I know he goes on, he's like, well, I don't advocate political violence. I was like, no, but you're preparing for it, right? You're just showing how this person's an evil person. And this is after his death. So I just want to also clarify a couple things he said at the end. One of the things he said, Charlie Kirk said that the Civil Rights Act was a mistake. This is an interesting point. I don't know the exact time Charlie Kirk first brought up Civil Rights Act, but many students have asked him about this on his college tours. And he will actually tell you because when you say, oh, you thought the Civil Rights Act was a mistake, that makes you think blacks shouldn't have rights, women shouldn't have rights, you shouldn't be allowed to vote, you can't get a job, we should have segregation. That's not ever what Charlie Kirk has said, ever. All he said was it went too far because there are people who are using the Civil Rights Act to let boys play in girls' sports, or boys go into girls' locker rooms, or men go into girls' locker rooms, or men go into women's prisons and rape them. That was his point, but that wasn't discussed. And I think that's very important. He had very ignorant man calling him a supremacist. And again, you wonder where these other kids, I'm doing my due diligence, I'm doing my homework. These kids are not. They're just hearing evil for many different people. So I will also say at the end, I don't know what he's talking about with the Jews and Western culture. I've never heard him say that. If someone else has and they know, please put it in the comments so we can have that discussion. I've never heard him say that. I imagine if he said something tangential to that, it's probably like everything else. It's taken out of context. But please, if someone knows, put that in the comments. Oh, and the last thing, yeah, he was anti-abortion. Oh, the humanity. Now again, I'm not going to go into the abortion thing here. I would love to one day get someone here who is pro-abortion and have a discussion. I think it would be really excellent. I'm not going to get into state versus federal, all the nuances, all the exceptions, all that. I'm not going to say that. It's one hell of a podcast. But he wasn't, like, they make it seem like he's anti-women's rights. It's like, no, he's just anti-killing babies. Yeah, I always think it's funny because people will say, oh, he's anti-women's rights. It's like, as if they don't want women to vote or have a job. No, they just don't want the babies to be killed. Don't say anti-women's rights. Say anti-abortion. Say what you're saying, right? And by the way, the last time I checked, about 50% of abortions, actually probably even more, are girls. I'm going to show you one more video, and this is from that fateful day. I will not show you the murder. It is too awful. But I'll show you right after. Now, it's interesting, when these vile acts occur and these extreme acts, people who are not prepared for what might be coming will just act whatever their nature brings them, which is usually fight or flight or freeze. And I know we all think we're fighters, but again, unless you're ready, set, and prepared for it, you have no idea what you're going to do. And you might do different things at different times. And I think, as an aside, I think we've seen too many horrible events where someone is killed, murdered, beaten, and the people do nothing. And they're like, how could they just stop and do nothing? Well, number one, Daniel Penny did something and he got arrested. But number two, a lot of people freeze. It's overwhelming. And I don't fault them for that. They're not bad people. It's not as easy as you think. But I want to show you this video, this guy in the crowd. As soon as Charlie Kirk was shot, I want to show you his reaction. So watch this. Yeah, that guy was cheering the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Now, because of the internet, he was found, and he posted a video saying, no, you misunderstand. You see, I heard the bang, and I thought it was a firework, and I looked, and I didn't see any smoke, and then I realized, oh, it must have been a gun. And because there was one gun, maybe there were others, so I started chanting USA to as a distraction so other people could get out. Go fuck yourself. Are you fucking kidding me? Just fucking don't say anything. You're a fucking monster. You are the problem. You are just as bad. You are just as brainwashed. Just don't say anything. Go fucking hide in a hole. That is the worst. Who has the common sense or the thought process? I'm going to start chanting USA? No, you want to protect people? run up, look for the killer, get people out, get him moving. You don't start chanting USA. Fuck you. And by the way, unless he knew this was coming, that he was part of it, that was his natural response. That wasn't fight or flight or freeze. His natural response was joy and jubilation. That's how brainwashed these people are. These are the people that killed Charlie Kirk. Because he was opening their eyes. Never forget this. Never forget Charlie Kirk. Pray for his family in this awful, awful time. And if you want to honor him, don't hide. Don't yell. Don't start fights. Don't antagonize people. But don't hide. Speak your mind. Don't be part of that 88% that lies. And break this death cult.